Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Around the Big Ten podcast. I'm Mark Givler, joined as always by Chip Minnick. Got an interesting show here today. A lot of different things to talk about. We're going to talk a little recruiting, a little spring game action coming up here, or not coming up here if you're certain schools. And we've got an injury update that I think could actually have a pretty big impact on one Big Ten team that Chip and I are going to throw around there too as well. So let's get into it. Let's go around the Big Ten here on April 8th, 2025. And yeah, let's start with the injury news. Chip, it appears that Iowa transfer quarterback Mark Gronowski is ahead of schedule in rehab from his shoulder surgery. We talked in the pre-spring capsules about Iowa, about how this is kind of a tough deal for them, that this is the type of quarterback who could elevate their offense quite a bit, but you're getting him as a transfer, and then he's missing time with the injury. He can't throw, but it sounds like things are trending in a positive direction.
Yes. Last week, Mark Gronowski had an interview with an Iowa podcast, and he was quoted as saying that, he's just doing everything PT wise. He's ahead on everything right now. And then he, kind of amplified that by saying, I could have kept playing through this, but, he thought this was the best decision for his future, to make him, to do the surgery, to be ready for this coming fall, to make him the best player he could possibly be. And then Kirk Ferentz echoed at a news conference saying that Gronowski would be throwing lightly, not with the team. Biggest thing was to make sure nobody, runs into him. He doesn't fall down. Just want to be cautious with him. But if you're an Iowa fan, you have to take, I think, both those separate comments, regardless of whether it's from Kirk Ferentz or Mark Gronowski, with a lot of optimistic thought. Because again, I think Iowa, we've talked about it, that, the one thing that's been holding them back is just their offense has just been stagnant, and Gronowski represents a tremendous opportunity for Iowa. I fully anticipate the strong running game, the consistent offensive line play, the consistent tight end play. But if they have a quarterback, the caliber of Mark Gronowski, fully healthy, dual threat, I think that just adds another element to that Iowa offense, and it can only be good things for Iowa.
It feels like his health and his effectiveness this year may have the most impact on his team than perhaps any other quarterback in the Big Ten. Like, I don't think that's that outrageous of a thing to say. If you talk about the potential of what maybe his ceiling could be for them versus if he's not healthy, if he's not effective, if they have to go with somebody else, like what that could mean to the performance of the Iowa offense. I mean, you've got other quarterbacks, a lot of new quarterbacks coming in. Many of them are going to be insulated. Even at a place like Michigan, you're going to be insulated by a great defense. At Ohio State, you're going to be insulated by great receivers. There are so many other places in the conference where I don't think it's that much of a variance based on what your quarterback situation is, given the other 21 guys on your roster and everything that goes involved with those programs. But boy, this seems like an important one for Iowa.
Absolutely. I think, even with Gronowski missing spring ball, I think Iowa, that they've looked at him as the way I kind of refer to as kind of like that opportunity to expand that offense. I mean, they have Brendan Sullivan manning the shop, so to speak, while Gronowski is out. And by no stretch am I going to sit here and say, oh yeah, like Gronowski, I mean, like he's got the job completely sewn up. I think it would be a disservice to Brendan Sullivan, especially in today's transfer portal world, where you don't allow Sullivan to at least be in the mix to possibly be the starter. But I think you're absolutely right, Mark. I think that he represents such a departure from what Iowa has been offensively, or I should say lack of offensively, for the last several years, that I think a lot is hinging on his health. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how Iowa proceeds with his rehab through the summer. And then when the games actually start to count next August and September, how Gronowski looks.
Yeah, the sooner you can get back out there, even if it's just throwing on the side in the summer and maybe developing a little chemistry with the receivers on the side, the better for Iowa. Like when this first came out, I was like, well, they're hopeful he's going to be ready for fall camp. Now it would appear that is looking more and more likely for Iowa. They're going to have him full go for fall camp. We'll see how that, shoulder injuries can be a little fickle. So we'll see how the next couple months go. But very good news for Iowa that he is appearing ahead of schedule. Other good news for the Big Ten. We're going to talk about Ohio State recruiting a little bit. We did on a previous show. They've continued their hot streak. We'll get to that in a minute. But two other programs that maybe aren't getting a ton of headlines, that don't really get a lot of recruiting headlines, maybe are doing some good things as well. And one of those we also talked about kind of recently, but they've continued it, and that is Illinois. The Fighting Illini. We had mentioned that they were like number 10 in the recruiting rankings, I think at one point a few weeks ago, when we talked about how they were probably going to slip down a little bit, but that they were kind of in a good spot to have a really strong recruiting class. Well, they just picked up 4-star running back Javari Barnett out of Tampa, Florida, out of Tampa Tech. Again, a 4-star prospect. This is, I believe, their 4th 4-star prospect in the class. Their recruiting ranking is sitting at 13, which is still very good, especially when you consider that a lot of the other perennial recruiting powers have started to pick up commitments the last few weeks and kind of catch up. But there's Illinois still sitting in the top 15. They got another 4-star running back chip. It just, again, this just feels like a program that, if these programs were stocks, that you maybe want to, buy on Illinois right now.
I think that's a really good point, because Illinois is one of those programs. I've said it before, and I believe that you agree with me, is like it's a program that excels at the development of talent that may not necessarily be, blue chip, 5-star guys. And this is not meant disrespectfully when we're talking about Barnett, is that, he missed time, last year, due to injury, but that did not preclude teams like Penn State, like USC, like Miami, like Florida going after him, and for Illinois to be able to go down to Tampa, persuade him to come up north. And, say what you will about Brett Bielema, he has a thing for running the ball. The results speak for themselves. And so I think Barnett looked at this opportunity to come up, play for Illinois. He obviously likes what he heard from Bielema and the staff. And so, like the way that you phrase it, Mark, like it would not be a bad stock investment, because Illinois is certainly doing all the right things in their talent acquisition to be a contender within the Big Ten, not just this coming season, but for years to come.
Yeah, the commitment came 2 days ago, coming out of his visit to Illinois. We will see kind of which schools kind of allow this to happen and which ones continue to push. The offer list is like ridiculous. Alabama, Auburn, Florida, Miami, Iowa, Ole Miss, Penn State, Tennessee, Texas A&M, USC. He had officials set up with Penn State and Alabama in June. So we'll see if they're able to maybe convince him to take officials, because we know that happens now as guys commit. They say they're solid, and then they ultimately do take officials elsewhere. So we'll see if how hard those schools push to get him on campus for an official this summer, now that he's made his commitment to Illinois. But this is a guy with a lot of talent, 6'1", 195, so very solid running back build. And again, these are the types of players that if you can pull them out of Florida and pull them away from SEC programs, these are the types of players you need to make a playoff push. Illinois was not that far from making a playoff run last year. And they were probably just a game away, really, if you think about it. So the margin there for them between where they were this past year and like getting to the playoffs, it's not a huge leap that they have to take. So, you need to get guys like this to continue those types of runs. So more good news there for Illinois. Here's an interesting development. Purdue, 3 commitments since March 29th. 2 of them here as we record on Tuesday the 8th. Isaiah Wright, a really solid running back out of Michigan, had big numbers this past year as a junior. They were able to land his commitment. And Corin Berry from California, a 4-star quarterback from California who was previously committed to Boston College, flipped to the Boilermakers today as we record this. So Barry Odom making a splash. I mean, I think these are big time pickups, but you flip a 4-star quarterback at Purdue where you're trying to just find something, anything, to kind of hang your hat on for the next couple of years in the future because your roster got so depleted this offseason. I mean, this isn't tremendous, is it not, Chip?
Absolutely. There's that old expression, within adversity, there's opportunity. And I'm not trying to take shots at Purdue. I mean, we all know how difficult of a situation that Barry Odom is in, trying to get that program back to being a competitive program within the expanded Big Ten. But these young men, I believe, they're looking at this as, all right, there's certainly going to be ample opportunity to come in while that rebuilding process takes place. And yes, like they still have to sign up and enroll early and do all those things. And, who's to say that, when it comes to like the transfer portal, if Barry Odom doesn't try to stock the roster once again after this upcoming season. My larger point being is that a lot of times when it comes to recruiting is being able to persuade players like, hey, you can come in. There's, look at the season that we are coming off of. We're a brand new coaching staff. Everyone's going to have equal opportunity. And so these players, regardless of, what the situation is currently at Purdue, they're probably thinking, hey, I could be part of that class that puts Purdue back on the winning track. We'll see, like you said a moment ago when we were talking about Barnett, will they stick with those commitments? I mean, there's still a decent amount of time between now and signing day, but I think it speaks volumes about Barry Odom and the job he and his staff are doing, persuading these players to give their verbal commitments to come and play for the Boilermakers.
Yeah, he's got a little something going here the last week and a half here. They got 3 commitments. They're starting to get guys on campus, and really they seem to be impressing the players are hosting and the players are talking to kind of with their vision of the program. So very nice pickups there for Barry Odom's Purdue program in his first off season with the program. So good news there. Ohio State again. We talked a little bit about the offensive line recruiting that they've picked things up there, but they get 5-star safety Blaine Bradford out of LSU, out of Baton Rouge, over LSU and Texas. Get him out of Louisiana. Not to repeat ourselves again, but you immediately are like, okay, like kid from Baton Rouge with LSU and Texas in his final 3 along with Ohio State. You get his commitment now. What does that even mean? Does that mean they lead? Does that mean does it mean that's who he liked this past week? Like what does that really mean? Would be the pessimist kind of view. But the optimist view is that he showed a lot of interest in Ohio State. He's been up to campus multiple times already. Hasn't made his official yet. And, Dad was on Twitter. Like, people were talking about, oh yeah, he's going to flip to LSU or he's going to flip to Texas. And, he's going to go and this is going to be a circus. And Dad was like responding to people on Twitter, like, no. Like, this is not going to be a distraction. Our commitment means something, et cetera, et cetera. So Chip, first of all, this is a huge pick, assuming this does stick, this is a huge pickup for Ohio State, who has to replace Lathan Ransom this year. Will have to replace Caleb Downs next year. Spoiler alert, Caleb Downs will not play his 4th year of college. So this feels enormous if they can hold on to this.
Well, like you just said, I think you just kind of answered your own question, is that I think let's give credit to the results on the field for Ohio State as being, in my humble estimation, must be part of the persuading process for Bradford, in the sense that, all right, look at how well Lathan Ransom played for Ohio State. It's still difficult for me to, put it in the past tense. And Caleb Downs, what you see, I mean, if Caleb Downs, everyone already knows that if Caleb Downs was able to be in this year's upcoming NFL draft, he would be one of the top selections. So, hold on to the good feelings of having Caleb Downs for another year in Columbus. But getting back to the Bradford commitment, I think that's what, if you're Matt Guerrieri, is being able to point to say, like, look at the kind of style of defense that you will be coming into at Ohio State. I'm not going to sit here and suggest that Bradford's going to come in and be a starter from day one, but we all know that, all right, when the talent is there, that Ohio State is certainly not going to be shy in allowing him opportunities to succeed. And like you said, Mark, I mean, we all know that Caleb Downs only has one more year left. So I think the roster and the style of defense that Ohio State has been playing, I think it certainly had to be a tremendous selling point in the recruitment of Bradford.
Ohio State's top 2 safety targets, and I don't include Simeon Caldwell in this because he's more of a defensive athlete. He could be a safety. He could be a linebacker. He was obviously very highly coveted by the Buckeyes. He also recently committed. But the 2 top pure safety prospects on their board have been from Louisiana in Bradford and Mississippi in Braylon Womack. And I was like, we talked about this on an OSU podcast I was on, and I did on the Skull Session podcast that I do and over at Buckeye Huddle. And I was like, boy, that's an interesting spot to be in if you're Ohio State, because even if you get commitments from those guys, those are not going to be easy to hold on to. I think they're still hurting a little bit from the name offered, kind of playing things out to the very end and then flipping at the very, very end. And so there's going to be some, especially among the fans who kind of who live and die with this stuff. It's going to be an interesting ride at safety, but again, Bradford has kind of said and done all the right things. So we'll see what happens. But very, very big pickups here for Illinois, Purdue, Ohio State in recruiting. Big Ten continuing to have a really good cycle in the recruiting trail. You look at like what USC is doing, what Oregon's going to be doing. Michigan doesn't have a lot of commitments yet, but they seem to be in on a lot of guys right now. Penn State's always recruiting well, but you're starting to see things pick up for like the rest of the league, like that. There's other teams in the league that don't get kind of the national recruiting attention. So, so far so good for the Big Ten. Now, on the field, spring games coming fast and furious now. We got spring games this weekend. We have spring games the following weekend. Some schools don't have spring games. We got Michigan State, USC, Nebraska doing nothing. Michigan's on tape delay. Ohio State kind of put out, they're going to have a pretty normal spring game. I mean, about as close to a normal spring game as you'll maybe see this year. Who is right here? Or are they all right? Are different programs in different situations? Like what do you think about all this? This just seems so weird how everyone kind of looks so differently at all this stuff.
I think that they kind of know, you know better than anyone when it comes to recruiting. Ryan Day likes to use the spring game as a recruiting emphasis, like being able to point to any of the prospective players, like this could be you next year. Now, granted, it's not the same as it was a few years ago. I don't think Ohio State, it'd be tremendous if they did, if they got like the 90,000 plus type crowds that they sometimes have had. But even so, I think it's good to have some kind of a spring game atmosphere for your recruiting efforts. Michigan, their rationale was, all right, well, we're going to have a spring game, but we're not going to televise it until the following week. I think they're afraid of the transfer portal. I sit here and I'm thinking, all right, if there are players within your program who are thinking about entering the transfer portal, I don't think it's necessarily because of how they perform in a spring game per se. I think that if they're disgruntled, that they're going to probably be looking to enter that transfer portal regardless of how well or how poorly they play in your respective spring game. But that's just my opinion.
I agree. I think you're cutting off your nose to spite your face a little bit by not having any type of spring game. And I get dialing it back. You don't want guys going out there getting injured. And, to an extent, like I get dialing it back even for the portal purposes. Like if you've got maybe a star underclassman that maybe isn't right in your starting lineup right now that you maybe don't want to showcase for the entire world. I mean, I guess, but it feels very insecure to me. That being said, I think we do have to be a little bit aware of the different situations. like Michigan State right now is in a much different situation than like Penn State or Ohio State or Oregon. Like Penn State, Ohio State, and Oregon are kind of the schools that are going to poach like you're not really like going to poach those programs very often unless you get like you said, a disgruntled guy or a young guy maybe who gets impatient or homesick. But the idea that you're going to poach a top guy from those programs is it's difficult. And it's likely only going to happen from a tier 1 school to another tier 1 school. So like a star player is probably going to transfer. If they're going to transfer from a place like Ohio State, they're probably going to transfer to a place like Oregon or Penn State or Alabama, and vice versa. They're not really going to, you're not going to lose Jeremiah Smith to a 6-6 team. Like you're just not. So I get that some of these schools are in a bit of a precarious situation with the portal where they're getting targeted a little bit more in terms of their star players, whereas the tier 1 schools are kind of, it's their underclassmen that are getting targeted that aren't starting, where it's like, hey, you could start here. Like, why aren't they playing you? You were a 5-star, like you were whatever. And so there's a little different dynamics in terms of how different programs have to protect their rosters from other programs poaching. But I don't know that the juice is worth a squeeze on this. I think you have some type of showcase, get the fans in the stands. My goodness, especially at like Nebraska, where like that's a big thing. Like to me is like, they're one of those programs that'll put like 70, 80,000 in the stands for a spring game. That knocks the socks off recruits. It blows their minds when they do that, especially when they come down from like Florida, because in Nebraska has, 3 times as many fans in the stands for their spring game as Miami does for like a top 25 matchup in October. And these Florida kids go up there and like, oh my goodness, these people love football. This is incredible. And like, I think there are some missed opportunities here. I like Matt Rule. I like Jonathan Smith. I've been critical of Lincoln Riley, so I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, yeah, I'm all about Lincoln Riley. I've been very critical of him. But, like, this just feels, again, a little insecure, and I don't think I like it.
Yeah, I certainly, you can count me on in the category of not liking it. I just think there is something, I mean, like all coaches, college or pro, I guess I'm sure that there are high school coaches that would fit this category. There's a certain level of paranoia. And when it comes to this, my point about the transfer portal is I just, going back to what I said a moment ago, is that I truly believe, from an Ohio State perspective, if there are players on the Ohio State roster, and I'm just going to use Ohio State as the example, because last year there were individuals who, after the Ohio State spring game, put their name in the transfer portal. Ohio State probably knew, the most prominent one that comes to mind as I sit here was, Dallin Hayden, prior to the spring game, had, on social media announced that his intentions to leave, didn't participate in the spring game, went to Colorado. The good or bad of that decision, I am not here to sit and that is, I think Ohio State fans certainly have a wide variety of perspective and opinion on that. But my point being is, I just think if you're concerned about, oh, this guy is going to try and woo my stars or whatever, I think until the NCAA enacts some kind of a tampering rule that is enforceable. I mean, I really do. I think I that's why I'm stammering over this. It's like, it doesn't seem to make sense. Is that players, if they're unhappy, they're going to find any reason, justifiable or otherwise, to enter the transfer portal. I don't think it has to be because like they had a great spring game, that's why they entered. There's probably more underlying reasons for somebody entering the transfer portal than their performance within your respective spring game.
Yeah, I agree with that. And it's almost like, again, I use the, cutting off your nose to spite your face analogy, because it's almost like a kind of like they're doing this in protest of there not being more legislation in terms of poaching. And possibly even having players now have contracts since they're, getting paid quite a bit of money in some cases. And this is kind of their way of like, well, if you guys don't do something about this, we're just not going to have a spring game. It's like, well, is that actually hurting anyone other than yourself? Like by
Right.
doing that? I don't know that it is. And I completely agree with the thought that there needs to be more, kind of more standards in terms of kind of too much gray right now. It needs to be black and
Yes.
white. Too much gray right now. I do think I have always been pro player in terms of guys getting paid. To me, it's just like a travesty to me that these guys can like win Heisman trophies, especially the guys who maybe aren't great pro prospects and make millions of dollars for their school. And you get to just in perpetuity use their name, image, and likeness to sell the future, the future of your program. Like this is going way back, but like Archie Griffin has made untold sums of money for Ohio. They still get to use his name, image, and likeness, everything to sell whatever they need to sell, whatever product they need to sell, whatever recruiting pitch they need to make. And so I have always been very pro player in that regard. But the other side of this is, okay, like you're getting paid now. And in some cases, you're getting paid a lot of money. Like you're getting, 6 figures, even low 7 figures to do this. There should be some standard on your end, some type of obligation on your end to your team, to your program. So I get it. I'm not saying I don't agree with the coaches who want this legislation. I think everyone does. Even the schools that maybe benefit from the portal, I think would like to know that they've got their guys, under some type of agreement. So I'm not saying that. I just don't think this is necessarily the way to get this done. Unfortunately, the way to get it done won't happen. The way to get it done is for like the schools to all kind of band together and kind of like, we're not gonna poach, and we're not gonna they're not gonna agree to that. Like, no, everyone wants to poach. So it is kind of hypocritical, I guess, on their end too, at the end of the day, where it's, well, we need to put these rules in so people stop poaching, but you're poaching too. There's layers to this, but I do agree with their stance. I just let the kids go out there and throw the ball around and let the fans get a look at the team. And I think there's ways to raise NIL dollars through it. I don't think this is the right way to go about things.
Yeah, the rumor is that with the expanded college football playoff schedule and season, that the rumor going around is that colleges may start to adopt more of a NFL type philosophy that is, like the organized team activities or the OTAs, kind of, like the idea of, all right, this team has, for training camp and, being up, in the Cleveland area, for example, like the Cleveland Browns have practices available and team fans can come out and watch the team practice. And it's not usually anything, it's not the same thing as a game, but, like you said, throwing the ball around, sometimes like they have, some kind of like scrimmage activity where, like on goal line and things like that. So it's not the same as a game, but it's allowing the fans to have an opportunity to watch the players in, I don't want to call it game-like situations, but in, it's close to game-like situations, and then opportunities for pictures and autographs and things like that. So it remains to be seen what direction it will go. I agree with you. I don't think you're never going to get everyone 100% on board, no matter what kind of a decision. But I think, for these schools, I think, especially as it relates to the recruiting side of things, I think you're being overly paranoid and hurting your program with regards to your recruiting efforts and then trying to build up interest from the fan base by not having a spring game.
I would venture to guess at a place like Nebraska that countless number of fans have been formed
Yes.
by mom and dad taking them to a spring game.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
Like an untold, like just a preposterous number probably of fans have started that way for a program like Nebraska or Wisconsin or something like that. But at the end of the day, like the NCAA has, or no, I shouldn't say the NCAA because it's not just an NCAA problem, but college football has a calendar problem.
Oh, yes.
Your free agency and your coaching carousel and your playoffs are all happening at the same time. How is that possible? That's the thing they've got to figure out. Like the portal's a bigger issue than it needs to be because of the timing of it all. You've got like the portal open, but your recruiting class is still like being figured out, and you're also playing in the playoffs. What? And your assistants are taking other jobs during the playoffs. What are we doing here? Get with Roger Goodell and lay this out. Like the NFL has done a brilliant job on two fronts, because the other thing it does, not only does it lessen the absolute anarchy that we see in college football every winter, but it keeps the NFL in the news. The NFL is essentially a 4-month sport, yet it dominates the news cycle 12 months a year, 24 hours a day.
Yes.
It dominates the year-round news cycle, despite being a sport that essentially is only in season about 4 months. That would be a good thing for college football to kind of have your recruiting, your high school recruiting, your playoffs, your coaching carousel, your transfer, like all kind of follow each other instead of all going on at one time in like 1 6-week period. Spread it out, make it make sense, and get yourself in the added benefit of that is you get yourself in the news cycle year round. Because no one talks about college football in like May and June. We could moving forward if you guys would get with the program here.
Absolutely. I have a feeling that with the college football playoff expansion, because there's talk of that already, all right, let's expand it. That I think that there will be one of the, I don't want to call it a domino to fall, but one of the things that will be as a result of the expansion of the college football playoff is coming up with some distinct blocks of time related to recruiting as well as the transfer portal as a result of, all right, well, we need to be fair to, all the parties across the board. If you're a team within the playoff, how is it fair to be, like you just said, trying to manage the recruiting process as well as the transfer portal process and coaches leaving? I think that there's going to be some distinct time allocation determined as a result of the newly expanded playoff. And those meetings are taking place not as we speak, but kind of in the background. They should be announced sometime in the very near future.
Yeah, I mean, it's a matter of when this gets to 16.
Yes, I would agree with that.
And maybe it goes to 14 first. Maybe it goes 12, 14, 16. But it's a matter of when this thing gets to 16. It just is.
Exactly.
And I said that like when they went to 4. I said it's a matter of time until they get to 16. Because, and then of course I said it, again after when they announced it's going to be 12, because what was obvious at the time was they're going to eventually see how much freaking money this whole thing makes.
Yes.
And, it's maybe not the best way to look at it. But when they went to 4, I'm like, it's going to make so much money. And then they went to 12. I'm like, oh my goodness, how much money is this? This is going to make 12 teams going to make so much money that they're going to be like, I just hope they stop, because it's going to 16. I've accepted that, but I just hope they stop. Like, don't go to 24 or 32 or what, gosh. So I just hope they stop. Chip, I don't know if you're on board with, if you want 12 or 16, but that's my concern, because they are going to expand.
So my thoughts on the expansion is, number one, it's inevitable. Number two, that I think is, when it is announced, like the idea of, all right, so many conferences getting so many, automatic bids and things like that. I mean, the rights and wrongs of that, we can certainly have those discussions and debates if there are to be had. But one thing that I think is, no matter how it shapes out, I think once that monumental decision, and the reason why I chose that word is I think that is the biggest issue that college football administrators and coaches and athletic directors and the networks, let's not absolve the networks. Once they have that figured out, then I think all the other, I don't want to say that they're of minimal importance, but they fall behind the playoff expansion. All of those other decisions related to the calendar will start to fall into place because the biggest one has been, I don't want to say solved permanently, because we know that there will always be people wanting it to be expanded even more. But I think once that next contract is signed and sealed, then the calendar, I think, will start to take shape as a result of that.
Yeah. And then we'll see, like, once things get reined in a little bit and the schedules are a little more sane and we don't have all this craziness with the portal and there's like things are just blocked off better time-wise, calendar-wise, maybe we'll see spring games return. Who knows?
Maybe.
Or players are under contract. You know, if you're signing players to like 2 or 3 year contracts or something, maybe we see these return.
Yeah. All I can say is I'm looking forward to the Ohio State spring game. It's been something you mentioned about, Nebraska and fans bringing, people bringing their children to that. I can tell you from personal experience, that was what my wife and I would do with our children. I don't think it's completely ironic that my daughter graduated from Ohio State, that my son is going to be coming in as a transfer student next year at Ohio State, because some of those real fond memories of the Ohio State spring game. So, yeah, I think it's short-sightedness on the part of those programs, and hopefully they'll come around.
All right. Well, we will. We're going to talk about some other stuff later this week. We're having a second episode later this week. I think we're going to get into the Pat Fitzgerald Northwestern situation and dive into some of that stuff and talk a little more off-season rumblings. But hope everyone got something out of this. We kind of opined about the spring games a little bit, but very good recruiting news going right now for a lot of Big Ten programs. So glad we were able to cover that, and we'll continue to kind of stay on top of these things for everyone. But I think that's a good enough stopping point for this one. Thank you guys for watching and listening and supporting the channel. And thank you, Chip, for joining me as always. We will catch you guys in a few days with another episode.